টেস্ট করুন।
हेलो हेलो
ଆପଣଙ୍କୁ କିଛି ଧରିବା ଦରକାର ନାହିଁ।
हेलो am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Good
Am,
evening, ma'am.
am I visible? Good evening. Very good evening.
No,
Good
ma'am.
evening.
You are not visible. No, ma'am. Only audible.
Not visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is my visible now? Am I visible now?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Ma'am, no, ma'am.
No,
No.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No.
Someone is saying yes, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am. You are not visible.
Okay. Let's start. I think there is some problem.
Okay, ma'am.
Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now I am sharing my screen.
कोटी रखी एक्स्ट्रा इंटर स्क्रीन कर दी स्टार्ट इटा को क्लिक करूँ चाहिए हाँ मिनिमाइज करूँ हाँ ये खुला है
Is my slide visible to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Today we'll discuss about the topic language across the curriculum. That is your BES-124. And today we'll discuss about block 1. In block 1, we have 4 units. Unit number 1, language and society. Number 2, language and learning. Number 3, understanding language across the curriculum. And number 4, classroom as a space for discourse. So first of all, we have to understand the concept language across the curriculum. So what do you mean by the term language across the curriculum? Yes, anyone who want to say something?
Ma'am, to priority our mother tongue.
To prioritize our mother tongue.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, it shows that whether the curriculum belongs to the scholastic area or co-scholastic area, we need language across the whole of the curriculum, because without it we cannot communicate, we cannot interact with our learner.
Okay, very good. ଆଉ କିଏ କହିବେ? Okay, let's discuss. Language across the curriculum. The term itself implies that first person who has said that it is the mother tongue. No, language does not mean only mother tongue. Language may be any kind of language. It may be mother tongue, it may be a foreign language, it may be a second language, any language we are connecting or we are using. That is called the language. Language is the medium of instruction, or we can say that medium of communication. Without language, no communication, no self-expression, and no identification is possible. So language is a means through which we can express ourselves, we can express our views, our ideas, our thoughts in a systematic way. So language paves the way for better communication, better self-expression and reflection, etc. Okay? So
Yes,
the
ma'am.
term,
Yes, ma'am.
okay. So the term language across curriculum means the entire thing that moves around curricular aspect. That means the language we are dealing in our academic field or in our curricular or co-curricular aspect or in a formal setting. It may be a formal setting, it may be informal setting. The language is used everywhere in our everyday life, in our academic field, in every field we are using language. So here, our today's topic of discussion is language across the curriculum, which emphasizes the key role language plays in learning. In learning, what is the role of language? I can say that language and learning both are inseparable or both are connected intimately. Without language, no learning is possible. So learning takes place when new facts are assimilated through listening and talking, reading and writing about what is being learned, and by relating this new learning to what has been learned before or the previous knowledge. So language is a link which connects the previous knowledge with the new knowledge. Language helps in the construction of knowledge, or you can say that language helps us to pave the way for better future or better society in which we can assimilate our previous knowledge into new knowledge and we can construct our knowledge. Next thing is that language helps in conceptualizing and expressing our thought clearly. Suppose we have some concept in our mind. You might have come across, or some people might have among you who are very intelligent or who have better ideas, but they are unable to express themselves because they have or they are lacking the actual means, the expression skill. They are lacking the expression skill. That's why they are not expressing themselves and their interior or their internal capabilities are not coming out and they are not using their potentiality to the fullest extent. So language helps in conceptualizing. Yes. Okay. So this implies that when one is writing observations, opinions, insights, and experiences in science and history or in any other subject, not only the content has to be accurate and appropriate, but also language chosen has to be appropriate and communicatively efficient. So particularly, we are dealing with the secondary level students. Particularly, we are dealing with the secondary level students whom will teach all the subjects. That is your disciplinary, that is the subject discipline. So, in order to be an effective communicator or effective teacher, we must have appropriate content knowledge and we are applying the language accurately and appropriately so that our communicative or our communication is efficient and it will be fruitful both for the learner and the teacher. How efficiently we are using the language. Is it appropriate to the learner? Is it accurately? Whether we are using the language accurately and fluently, whether it is beneficial or whether it is applicable to the need of the learner or not. Whether we are thinking that we are analyzing the need of the learner and we are also using that particular language according to the curricular demand of the learner also. So two things required. First of all, we have to identify the curricular needs of a learner. Then we have to give that much input in which way the output will be effective or the demands of the learner must be fulfilled. The curricular demands that is set for the learner must be fulfilled. So teachers need to build cognitive and communicative competencies in learners while teaching their specific subjects. So the role of the teacher is to build cognitive and communicative competencies in the learner. First of all, the role of the teacher is to feel free the students, how the student will express themselves freely. So first of all, teacher will set a situation or teacher will create a situation in which the learner will feel free to ask question, to communicate with the teacher, or the interpersonal communication between the teacher and student is a very important factor. If the teacher and student are not interpersonally connected or both are not connected properly, then what will happen? You must have observed that in our whenever you are in your upper primary level schooling or secondary level schooling, what happens? The teacher only gives importance to those students who are front speakers. who are communicating freely, and the rest of the students are sitting idle. Yes or no? Why these things
Yes,
happen?
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Why these
Yes,
things
ma'am.
happen? Because those students are not able to communicate effectively. It is one thing I am getting clear that it is not the fault of the student. Fault kahara? It is fault kahara. If the
Teacher.
student is not
Teacher.
teacher of what?
Teacher.
Teacher.
What is the role of the teacher here? So what is the role of the teacher here?
Create environment
Yes.
how the student can speak
Create
and
safe
take the
environment
communication
to
skillful.
the
Giving facilities to
Yes. Yes.
speak.
Very good. So here the role of the teacher is create a conducive environment for the learner in which the learner will feel free to express his ideas, to communicate effectively in the teaching learning process. So we will discuss language across the curriculum advocates an understanding and transaction of the curriculum based on the following premises. Language is more than communication skill. Language is not merely only communication skill. It also encourages the learners to express his ideas, to become a self-learner, to communicate effectively, to develop the competencies of creativity and critical thinking, problem solving. So language is not just only communication skill, it also fosters, it also promotes other complicated skills, to acquire other complicated skills. So language is also linked to the thinking process. Language is also linked to the thinking process of a child. Whatever we are thinking, we are expressing it through language. Language is a tool for conceptualizing, for thinking, for networking ideas and values. Language supports mental activity and cognitive precision. So, whatever mental activity we are doing, sometimes it is seen that whenever some time is given to the students, or some time is given to the students to reflect what they are doing, there happens a mental activity within the learner, and the cognitive precision follows. ଆମକୁ ଯେତେବେଳେ କିଛି ଟାଇମ ଦିଆଯାଏ ଭାବିବା ପାଇଁ, କିଛି ଟାଇମ ଦିଆଯାଏ ଚିନ୍ତା କରିବା ପାଇଁ, the output will be better. So a teacher must have the patience. The teacher must give a wait time for the learner. The teacher must wait for the learner. So language for academic purposes helps to express thoughts more clearly. Language helps to structure discourse and practice discourse function. What is discourse? Yes. Yes, anybody?
Ma'am, communication.
Yes. The responsibility for promoting efficient and effective language use of language efficiently and effective inside the classroom or inside the teaching learning process is called the discourse or classroom discourse. Okay, very good. Then language and society. We'll discuss about language and society. Unlocking cultural connections. So language and society is also both are inseparable, or we can say that a society cannot be imagined without language. So in a society, there are cultural ethos, cultural values, traditions, our value system. So all are closely associated or related with the language system. Our religion, our values, our ideals, all are related closely to the language system. Or without proper communication or without expressing our cultural identity, we cannot exist in a society. So there is an intricate relationship between the language and society. and it discovered the fascinating ways in which linguistic diversity shapes our world. So in our world, exists linguistic diversity and a variety of people living who have more than many languages, who are using many languages. So the power of words. Language is so much more than just a means of communication. It reflects our collective history, molds our cultural identities, and empowers us to navigate the complexities of social interactions. So language is not just a static entity, but subject to variation. This variation could be due to social factors such as geographical location, socioeconomic status, caste, ethnic group, and so on. We can say that if we move from one part of the region to the another part, the language also varies from region to region. Take the case of India. India is a country with multiple languages, people living with multiple languages. So social factors रे आमे देखिबा geographical location हो बा regional variation अनुसार मध्य language रो variation हेइ चले. Next is socio-economic status. If you can say that if you will go to the tribal areas or most remote areas, the language of that people is also different. They are using some other kind of language. So we can also see that in Tamil or Telugu, I can't remember properly. The language of rich people and the language of high class people and low class people also different. They're using different languages. The same language they're using differently. Sorry, the same words they're using differently. Similarly, according to caste system, if we can see that the more advanced or educated people are using a particular kind of language, and the less inferior people, sorry, you can say that the low class people, the low caste people are using a particular kind of language. We can also see that say that our neighbor are also using a different kind of language than us. More appropriately, we can also say that we are also using different languages or the same language in a different way when the situation also changes. Next is your personal factors such as sex and age. Here we can say that there is a barrier for the female counterparts that they should use more formal, correct pronunciation of the words. They are not supposed to use harsh words or top words. It is only suitable for the male counterparts because our society is still male dominated, and the female counterparts are supposed, or they are supposed to use the more formal language. Similarly, if you can say the age, you can say that the older age people are using a particular kind of language, and the younger age people are also using a particular kind of language. Context of the situation, such as topic of conversation, a relationship between participant and mode of communication. Topic of conversation. If the topic of conversation is informal, suppose we are talking with our friend, then the conversation will be more informal than if we are talking with our colleagues or our classmates, then it is, or to our principal or teachers, it is more formal. Next is your expressing identity, multilingualism, and cultural identity. Language serves as a vital marker of cultural identity, allowing individuals to express their heritage and connect with their communities. So language helps the people to express themselves, their cultural values, their identity, and to express their heritage and connect with the communities. Next is globalization and language diversity. We can say that what is globalization? Yes.
Connecting all people together.
Yes, very good. If you are talking about the from the point of view of language, very good. So it is the unification of domestic economy with the world economy. If you are connecting with the world, if you are connecting our language to the world language, or if you are uniting it together, then you can say that globalization is possible irrespective of language diversity. So explore how globalization influences multilingual societies, creating an interplay between local dialects and global languages. Yes, here the term comes dialects. That is most important from the point of view of language. Yes, anybody who can say the term dialect? What is dialect? Yes,
Sub languages.
sub languages. Okay. Or the language used by different peoples. Okay. The language used by different peoples from different parts of the country. That is the dialects. Next is the benefits of bilingualism. Discover the cognitive advantages and cultural appreciation gained through bilingualism in an increasingly interconnected world. So, what do you mean by the term bilingualism?
Ma'am, using two language at a time along with mother tongue and another language.
Very good. Bilingualism means using one language to learn another language. That means we can say that we are using our mother tongue to learn a foreign language or English language. That means we are using two languages simultaneously. That is bilingualism. So, what is the benefit of bilingualism? Is it beneficial?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. It is beneficial.
Okay, in what way there is the benefits of bilingualism exist, or you can say that there is the benefit of bilingualism.
It is used to understand a concept student betterly if the mother tongue
Very
is.
good.
Ma'am, it
Very good.
helps to explore the
Bilingualism,
new things.
yes, new
It
things.
helps to connect
Suppose,
more and more people.
yes, very good. Suppose in our class there are students from different cultures and different languages. So see, what is the role of the teacher here? The teacher will not only use the school language here. The teacher will first of all learn the home language of the child. The teacher will use the home language in the classroom with the school language. The teacher will adapt the child, make a situation for the adaptation of the child into the from the home language to the school language. So it is the duty of the role of the teacher to learn the home language of the child. So for that purpose, teacher may create a small group or create group among students. They can disseminate their culture or their languages among themselves and come out with a better output. So it is the role of the teacher to promote bilingualism or multilingualism in a classroom situation. Okay. So here are our social factors. That is regional variation, caste, dialects, and standard dialect. I have discussed the above two regional variation and caste dialects. What is the standard dialect? Standard dialect is a particular standard, a particular dialect, and it is codified and it is framed according to some rules and principles, so that it is called a standard dialect. We can say that our dictionary is a standard dialect. It is codified. Once it is codified, all the citizens or all the people must obey the dialect. So the standard dialect, it is not necessary that a standard dialect must be spoken by a lot of people so that it may be a standard dialect. No, some standards and some rules and regulations are fixed so that it is called a standard dialect. It must have some characteristic or criteria within it. Next is your personal factor. We have discussed sex difference and age differences. Variation due to register. So here register is a particular or more formal way. We can say that register means a person or um, a person using a kind of language on different occasions. That is called your variation due to register. For example, if one talks to one's colleagues about their work, the language is likely to be rather different than one will say at home with one's family. In other words, the language will depend on the relationship between the participants engaged in the act of communication. So, whenever a person is interacting with his family, the mode of communication or the language is more informal than it would be in an official setting. So here, variation due to register relationship between the participant. Also varies according to the relationship between the participants, subject matter of conversation, on which subject the conversation is taking place. Suppose the staffs or the colleagues are discussing about a picnic they're going to, they're planning to. So here the conversation will be more informal. Whenever they are talking about some academic discussion, it will be more formal. Similarly, mode of communication, written or spoken. Written communication or written mode of communication is more formal than the spoken communication. In spoken communication, we can use small phrases, whereas a written communication needs a specific type of instruction. Next is your languages in the classroom. Our classroom is multilingualism, as we have several languages. India contains more than 1599 other languages in addition to its 122 major languages according to the 2001 census of India. However, data from other sources varies partly because language and dialects are defined differently in different sources. In the 2001 census, it was noted that 122 languages were spoken by more than 10,000 persons, and 30 languages were spoken by more than a million native speakers. However, we have 22 civil or official languages. Language is the foundation of learning. Language is not only a way of communication but also plays a vital role in the learning process. So, what is that vital role? We'll discuss. Humans acquire language naturally and use it for a variety of purposes, including communication, self-expression, information storage, and transmission. So while language comprehension precedes and outstrips language output, children grow increasingly skilled in monitoring their language output and correcting their mistakes. At a more advanced stage of cognitive development, children become aware of the interactive nature of communication. We can say that the interactive nature of communication happens at the higher secondary level. That is, the students are more concerned with the creativity and critical thinking aspect, problem solving aspect. So here the nature of language they are using is more than mere communication. It is interactive. The mother tongue is also so labeled not because it is the mother tongue, but because, like the mother, it is the central factor behind the nurture of the children's mental and emotional makeup. So children's perception, comprehension, responses, creative expression, thinking and analysis all are maximally developed through the medium of mother tongue. According to NCF 2005, the child learns naturally his mother tongue. So it is the role of the teacher to extract the creative expression, to pave a situation, to create a situation for the child where the child will feel free to learn his enthusiasm, his creativity, his critical thinking, and he has a creative mind, he will discover, he will analyze. So these capabilities will be developed. So the teacher role is to create a situation where the child will spontaneously involve in the teaching learning process. So according to NCF National Curriculum Framework 2005, the teacher will create such a situation for the learner in which the child's full potential or optimum potential can be come out, or he can express himself freely. Mother tongue helps in concept formation, critical thinking, and creativity, and in imparting social values within the learners. The mother tongue helps the child to learn other languages, not only other languages, also mother tongue helps to develop the critical thinking and creativity among the learners. So language diversity that is exists not only in India, all over the world there is diversity in language. Next is our three language formula according to NCF 2005. In India, we have three language formula. Who can say that what is that three language formula? Anybody who has some idea, or who can want to answer?
Ma'am, the first language should be the mother tongue, and
The English,
And the area of the language,
regional language,
the
and English.
type English.
Yes, very good. So आमे जेतबेले सेकेंडरी लेवल को जाउचे हमर तीनटा लैंग्वेज हमें पढुचे हमर फर्स्ट लैंग्वेज रहउची गोटे सेकंड लैंग्वेज फॉरेन लैंग्वेज रहउची एवं गोटे लैंग्वेज हमर नेशनल लैंग्वेज जोटा हमें रीजनल लैंग्वेज जोटा हमें पढुचे. So that is the three language formula, and your currently जोटा आछि हमर नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी जोटा आछि हमर 2020 national education policy also emphasizes on the regional language, or the has given much importance on the use of Sanskrit language. Yes or no? Sunicho ki? Padicho?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So language learning from the mother tongue to other tongue. Languages are best learned when the focus is not on language learning. What does this mean? This means that instead of focusing on language structures, or whether the child is saying the language appropriately or accurately or not, the focus should be on whether the child is using the language meaningfully or not. Some meaning is coming out of that language. If the meaning is coming out from the language, then we should allow our students to express their ideas. आमे कोन करे ना जेतेबेले गोटे पिल्ला किछि भूल स्ट्रक्चर रे कर दिए लैंग्वेज जेतेबेले कहूची तार जदी सेंटेंस पैटर्न में किछि भूल रही जाए, तो टीचर संग संग कोन करे सेठी ताकू obstruction गोटे क्रिएट कर दिए. You are saying wrong. No, this should not be the case. We should allow the students to say a foreign language because it is not the mother tongue of the child. The child is learning the other language from the mother tongue. So we should provide a scope, or we should give scope to the child to learn. So skills acquired in the mother tongue are transferable. Research has shown that many skills acquired in the mother tongue or the first language can easily be transferred to another language. That is, if the learner develops good reading skill in Odia, he or she is likely to be able to apply these skills for learning in English also. But in India, the craze for English medium instruction leaves thousands of children illiterate in their mother tongue with equally low levels of achievement in English. This is the scenario of today's. This is today's scenario. I mean, देखिए what English medium पिला mother tongue is very weak. Similarly, it is not the case that this is the case of research. Research has shown that English medium, though the child is an English medium student, he has low achievement in mother tongue. Similarly, low achievement in that particular English language also. This is because the child is not acquired the mother tongue appropriately. So this problem arises in the later life. Next is your translanguaging. What is translanguaging? Translanguaging is switching between the language one knows in order to maximize communicative potential. That means translanguage is another form of multilingualism. If a person knows more than one language, or he is using that particular language he has learned in a variety of ways, then you can say that this is the process of translanguaging. So translanguaging is flexible multilingualism, whether it involves combining elements from different languages in the same utterance or alternating between languages in different parts of a task. It is a natural means of employing one's linguistic resources to their greatest effect. It occurs because individuals associate a given language with a specific. In the classroom, translanguaging may involve translating between languages. We can say that whenever we were studying in our high school or in our secondary level, what was the mode of instruction, or what is the way, or in which method we are taught the foreign language?
Ma'am, grammar
Yes,
translation method, obviously. Grammar
very good.
translation
That
method
is the
most of the
grammar
time.
translation method. Our English teacher first of all reads aloud the English text or paragraph, then he translates this into the Odia, translate this language into Odia. So this situation happens, translating between languages. Then your come structural approach exists. Then the direct method of teaching English, or the communicative approach. Today, our mode of or our method is communicative approach or direct method of teaching English. We can also use grammar translation method. There is no restriction, there is no barrier that we cannot use this grammar translation method, because all the methods we can use according to the situation or according to the level of learners in our classroom. Okay. आम क्लासरूम रे पिलांको लेवल अच्छी पिला माने जानि नहंती मदर टंग ठीक से पढ़ी पारु नांती, तो आमे सिर जदी डायरेक्ट मेथड रे पिलांको पढ़ेबा द फॉरेन लैंग्वेज को डायरेक्टली आमे फॉरेन लैंग्वेज रे ही पढ़ेबा, then it will not be suitable for the learner. So we have to apply their bilingual or the grammar translation method. So comparing and being playful with different languages, we may use different languages. We can use a variety of activities, mixing words and expression from different languages in the same spoken or written utterance. Using the home language in one part of an activity and the school language in another part, we have already discussed it. The child's home language should be also given importance in the classroom. So translanguaging has many educational benefits. It validates multilingualism, viewing it as a valuable asset rather than a problem or a temporary transitional interactional tool in early schooling. Represents a more efficient and effective teaching and learning technique than is possible in one language only. Offers opportunities for individuals to develop rich and varied communication repertoires for use within and outside school. Consequence of using multilingualism as a resource. Language of the students. First, number one is language of the students will be used more creatively in the classroom. The students will have enormous exposure to multiple languages at the same time. The students will learn to make rules across languages in a simulating environment, which will help to sharpen their skills of observing, deducing, and reasoning, thus leading to greater linguistic and cognitive flexibility. The level of participation and involvement will increase in the students are asked to contribute by sharing language data of their mother tongue. The amount of data that will be generated from within the classroom could in fact turn out to be better than any standardized textbook. These learning materials based on students' experiences and communicative needs would be far more dynamic. So this slide or these points clearly states that if a child uses a variety of languages, then he will enrich his stock of vocabulary, his creativity will increase. And if a teacher creates a classroom space for the learner, then they will come out with a better idea than that exists in the textbook of the learners. So the benefits of using such an approach, which is actively based, will be far greater and challenging than the usual classes which focus on learning rules. Language of the students will be used more creatively in the class. Sorry, I have repeated the slide. So what is the role of the teacher here? We'll have to become reflective teachers who continuously reflect on our experiences and evolve classroom practices that would enhance their linguistic growth. We'll have to be sensitive enough to adjust to their communicative needs. So here, not only the students' creativity will enhance, but also the teacher must have to be resourceful and reflective. That means the teacher must identify the learning difficulties, the learning needs of the child, and accordingly the teacher must give feedback, and the teacher must give some intervention so that the child will come out with a better outcome. The whole teaching learning enterprise will revolve around developing functional proficiency in English rather than focus on academic skill. So here your whole teaching learning enterprise, the focus should be on functional proficiency. That means all the four linguistic skill must be given due importance. But sometimes what we have done in our classroom that we give much importance on the reading and writing aspect of the child while we neglect the listening and speaking ability of the child. So we must have to give equal importance to all the four linguistic skill. So here the role of the teacher is that of a facilitator. The teacher will facilitate. The teacher will here not the apply the teacher-centered approach. That means the teacher will only give the instruction. The teacher will command in the classroom. The teacher will only give knowledge to the students. So that should not be the case. The role of the teacher here should be a facilitator. The teacher allows create a situation where the students interact within themselves. The students express themselves, the student communicate with each other in their own language or home language. So the students will come out with a better output than the than the interference of the teacher. So the final outcome may be a social change in which our students in their journey will discover that all languages are patterned, flexible and rule governed, and their own language is no less complex or inferior as compared to English. So here the child will not feel inferior, that his language is inferior. So that social change will occur in the classroom, which leads to a more developed society. So language and learning, the responsibility of a subject teacher. What is the responsibility of a subject teacher? The National Curriculum Framework 2005 highlights the role of language in learning. So what the NCEP 2005 says about language? Language as a constellation of skill cuts across school subjects and disciplines. Speech and listening, reading and writing, all are generalized skills, and children's mastery over them becomes the key factor affecting success at school. I have already discussed that point. In many situations, all of these skills need to be used together. This is why it is important to view language education as everybody's concern at school and not as responsibility of a language teacher alone. Sometimes it happens the case that uh, all other teachers, all other subject teachers give the responsibility to the language teacher, that it is the responsibility of language teacher to develop the language ability of the child. No, that should not be the case, because language is also used in history, it is also used in geography, it is also used in mathematics and science. But the terminology and the word, the phonemes, they are different. The pause, the intonation, or the phonemes or the phonetics used are different. But language is essential in each and every discipline and each and every subject. So it is the responsibility of all the subject teacher to teach the particular discipline or subject in a particular language or with the specialized instruction of that subject. So how can a subject teacher scaffold language learning? Develop in students competency and skills required for comprehending, identifying, selecting, integrating information in connection with specific tasks and materials. Focus on subject specific vocabulary. I have just discussed it. Whatever subject the subject teacher is teaching, the focus should be on vocabulary. highlight the underlying conceptual framework, analyzing subject-specific word formation, develop an ability to focus on the structure of text, chronological, and it should be chronological and sequential. This is most important. If you are using language in a particular way, if you are moving from one part to the other part, and we are not in a proper order or we are not in a sequence, then there is a chance that a misconception will create in the mind of the child. So we must follow a chronological order or a sequence where we are dealing in language classroom. Cause and effect. So here we must give scope for the child to analyze why these things are happening, what is the cause behind it, and what is the effect. If these things happen, then what will be the effect? So the role of the subject teacher, it may be in mathematics, it may be in science. Okay, so the scientist, if you can say that the scientists who are Newton kotha kuhuntu, Einstein kotha kuhuntu, if they do not think that what will happen or what is the cause behind it, so much inventions might not happen, or we cannot get so much interventions or inventions. So discussing, explaining, questioning, and using talk and writing to tussle with ideas are all means of achieving better understanding of a subject. Students would learn better if teachers generate open question and extend students' thinking through partner and group discussion. So here the focus point is we must not allow the student to use, or we should not ask the student close-ended questions or close-ended pattern. So our pattern should be open-ended, and our mode of instruction should be open-ended, and our question also should be, or our assessment criteria should also open-ended. So here the child will get enough space to express his ideas as compared to the close-ended discussion. Complementarity of language skill and subject knowledge of teachers. So here, subjects are not separate; they are complementary with each other, and we can say that. तुम बहिरे यार बहुत गुडे example देइछि, you can see that the different language skill, how the subject knowledge of the teacher affects the language skill, and how we can assimilate the language in different subjects. You can see that. So what teachers need to know about the subject matter they teach extends beyond the specific topics of the curriculum. For example, while English teachers need to know about particular authors and their works, about literary genres and styles, they also need to know about interpretation and criticism. A history teacher needs content knowledge but must also understand what history is. So particularly, we can say that history is interpretive or narrative. The nature of historical knowledge and what it means to find out or know something about the past. So a history teacher must also have sufficient content knowledge. Simultaneously, he must find out or know something about the past. He must correlate the past into the present. What is the significance of past, or what is the significance of past experiences into the present experience, or into the present situation? He will correlate the past into the present. Similarly, English teacher will develop vocabulary, not only develop vocabulary or literary skill among the learners, he must develop the ability of interpretation and criticism within the learner. So by promoting cooperation among students, encouraging active learning, by providing prompt feedback, by communicating high expectation from students, a teacher can impact a learner. Understanding language across the curriculum. You need to understand that particular kinds of activities require particular kind of language, and language reflects the activity. It is easy to determine the nature of an activity by the style of language used. By changing the style, tone, or the vocabulary, we can change the language and the situation. When we talk about the use of a particular type of a language in a specific context, we are referring to the term register. Learning a school subject involves learning its register. how language varies from everyday register and academic register. Speaking in different ways in different situations are called registers of language. Examples of register include the language of a newspaper article, the language of a conversation about the weather, academic prose, a recipe in a cookery book, and so on. Very often, the nature of an activity can be determined by the style of language used. So, the language a journalist uses is different from a language a weather predictor use. Similarly, and the language is different from different perspective, from different situation or the person who is using the language. A religious discourse, a popular film song, a sports commentary, a teacher's lecture on biology, and a politician's election speech are linguistically distinct. So language varies from situation to situation. So we are calling it register. The language of recipes certainly differs from the language of describing a scientific process. So in a science or in a scientific process, we are testing, we are evaluating, we are judging, we are coming out with a conclusion, we are experimenting. So the language that we use in science is different from the language you use in mathematics. Mathematics language is more abstract and it is more symbolic. Next is your oral and written registers. Spoken and written English differ both in grammar and lexis or meaning. So how the spoken and written English differ from each other? Anybody who can say or who want to add?
There is pronunciation difference from state to state.
Pronunciation difference. Okay, it is oral register. What about written register? We are comparing the oral register with written register. Communication is oral communication. Yes or no?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we are comparing here between oral and written registers. Is there any difference in the grammar and meaning between the oral and written registers?
Ma'am, in oral register, the words are not properly arranged, but in written, the words are systematically arranged. Whatever may be the language that are arranged systematically, but in oral, it's not.
Okay, yeah, you are right. But it is not arranged. We use a short phrase. We use it in phrase in oral language or oral register. Um, in written register, it is more formal. Okay. Suppose we are orally approaching our principal to allow us to for a leave. That is not so formal. But whenever we are giving it in a written form, a written application, then it is more formal. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So differences in language features of register are not arbitrary. Language features like words, vocabulary distributions, grammatical classes, syntactic construction. Syntactic means a structural construction and so on are not arbitrarily used. Different registers use the structure in varying degrees. So the use of language is not arbitrary. It is used in a particular purpose or it is used in a particular style. It is arranged systematically. Same individuals use different register in different situation. If the situation is different, then the language or the register will be also different. Academic register. The term academic register is used to describe the characteristics of language that make it academic. Academic register is particularly more formal and particularly it is used in a formal setting. The language of school is the language which the pupils use for thinking, for formulating and comparing ideas in a specific subjects, for interacting with their peers, to test their understanding and for making meaning of what they learn. So the language used by the pupils in a school is called the academic register, but the language used in home or in their family is not an academic register. So Cummins in 1979 differentiate between two type of skills, that is BICS and CALP. Basic interpersonal communication skill and cognitive academic language proficiency. Basic interpersonal communication skill is particularly those register or those skills which are used, or those language which are used in a informal setting. Suppose we are communicating with our friends, with our relatives, with somebody in a somebody who is very close to us. So that is becomes basic interpersonal communication skill. But here we should remember the basic interpersonal communication skill must have a meaning. That means we are communicating not for the sake of communication. It should be a meaningful conversation between the two counterparts. And the cognitive academic language proficiency, that is CAP, it particularly takes place in a more formal setting or academic field, in offices or in a formal setup. So what is the difference between the academic register and everyday register? Everyday register is more casual and friendly, whereas academic register is more formal and authoritative. In academic register, display of knowledge and ideas are in written work, and everyday register is verbal, informal use of mostly in everyday meanings. Academic register sentence used are long and complex, smaller and simple sentences are used. Action is changed in nouns to build concepts. Action is through verbs. Passive voice is common, active voice is used much. Long noun phrases which are short. So academic language is therefore developmental in nature, proceeding from simple to complex. Anybody who will describe this terminology or this sentence? Academic language is therefore developmental in nature, proceeding from simple to complex. How academic language is developmental? Yes?
Ma'am, again question, ma'am.
How academic language is developmental and it proceeds from simple to complex?
Ma'am, if we are talking about the child, at first, the child learning from our home environment, then the child may proceed towards the abstract thinking. So that's why it's called in developmental in nature. That's why, because the child first learn the simple thing, after that it will know the abstract knowledge.
Okay. Why academic language is developmental? We can say that first of all, the child will enter into a formal setting. The language he will use for the first time. The child comes to a school with so many experiences, but whenever he has entry into the classroom situation, he is not able to express himself freely. So the child will take some time, and it is the responsibility and the duty of the teacher to correct the mistake of the child and to give proper feedback so that the child will develop and the language of the child will develop in a systematic way. So the child will, or the language of the child will proceed from simple to complex. We can say that the language the child is using in the primary level, it becomes more refined in the upper primary level, and it becomes more refined in the secondary or higher secondary level. So the academic language is therefore developmental. Yes or no? आमे जेतबेले क्लास 5 रे पढुचे जो लैंग्वेज आमे यूज करूचे त हम लैंग्वेज रे किछि डेवलपमेंट होउचे जेतबेले आमे क्लास 8 ता क्लास 10 बा प्लस 2 जेतबेले आमे पढुचे यस और नो
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So the teaching of school language is a complex process and requires an understanding of language needs of the learners and language demands of the content. I have already discussed this point. School language or academic language is a complex process and it requires an understanding of language needs of the learner. First of all, we have to identify the language needs of the learner, in which stage he is, where the difficulty lies. We have to diagnose the cause, or we have to diagnose the difficulty of the learner. Then we appropriately identifying the difficulty level of the learner. Then our second aim is, according to the demands of the content or text, we have to prepare the child according to the content or the demands of the text. Teachers need to identify and consider the language demands as they plan to support student learning of content. The report of the National Achievement Survey, NAS. NAS ଜାଣିଛ? National Achievement Survey?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
ତୁମମାନେ ଯୋଉମାନେ DLED କରିଥିବ ସେମାନେ
Yes,
NAS
ma'am.
ବିଷୟରେ ଅଳ୍ପ ବହୁତ ଜାଣିଥିବ, କାହିଁକି ନା ତୁମେ FI କି ଯାଇଥିବ, ଫିଲ୍ଡ ଇନଭେଷ୍ଟିଗେଟର।
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
ମ୍ୟାମ୍ ଆଉଥରେ ଟିକେ କହିଦିଅନ୍ତୁ।
so NAS ର ଯୋଉ
Yes,
survey,
yes, ma'am.
your National Achievement Survey, National Achievement is survey is conducted across the country in one time at one place, ନାଇଁ କି? ମାନେ different regions ରେ ଗୋଟିଏ particular time ରେ NAS conduct କରାଯାଏ। Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
So what is the objective of NAS, conducting NAS? NAS କରିବାର objective କ'ଣ?
ମ୍ୟାମ୍ ପିଲାଙ୍କର achievement level ଦେଖିବା ପାଇଁ।
Across regions, ପିଲାଙ୍କ achievement level ଜାଣିବା across regions। କୋଉ region ରେ ପିଲାଙ୍କର achievement level is higher and what are the intervention they have taken and what is the cause? Yes or no? So ଯଦି achievement higher ହଉଛି ଗୋଟେ region ରେ, ତ କ'ଣ ସେମାନେ intervention strategy ନେଇଥିଲେ? Likewise, all the other state or all the other region will apply that strategy, and that innovative practice the state has taken, it will be disseminated among all the other states. So जो conduct ହେଇଥିଲା ଆମର national achievement survey, I have taken data from 2014, I think. I have not mentioned it. So the performance of class 8 student on the cognitive process of locating information shows that overall 54% of students are able to respond correctly to items based on the ability to locate information. That is simple retrieval of information from the given text. The data and performance of class 8 students on the cognitive process of inferring or evaluating clearly shows that not even half of the student could respond correctly to a single item within the cognitive process. So reasoning रे हो बा cognitive process रे जहाँ भी question पढ़ी less than 50% students have achieved that competency or that learning outcome. So overall, it can be confirmed from the above presentation and discussion that locating information was found easiest, whereas the ability to infer and evaluate were found most difficult for the learner. So we must develop within the child. So difficulty is because they are not properly acquainted with the language. So this problem arises due to the fact that they are not properly acquainted with the particular language or particular language used in different disciplines. Next is your components of academic language. First is your vocabulary. What is vocabulary? Yes?
Students' understanding capacity.
Students' understanding capacity about what?
About the present
About
situation
words.
or about the present situation.
Yes. So vocabulary refers to students' understanding of oral and print words and includes the conceptual knowledge. We are most often we use the term that enriching the stock of vocabulary. That means how much word the student knows, if the student knows the meaning of that word or not, and if the student is using that particular word in a sentence or not. So If the student is using the word in a particular sentence in a meaningful way, then we can say that the students have achieved the or enlarged the stock of vocabulary. Somebody please switch off your microphone. The word syntax refers to, so what is syntax? The word syntax refers to the set of rules and principles that govern the structuring of a sentence or a phrase in a language. So syntax is particularly concerned with the structure words in a particular sentence, a syntactic pattern. The purpose for which we use language to communicate is called language function. We use language to accomplish something in formal or informal setting for social or academic purpose. So language function means in which way we are using that particular language. So language may vary from situation to situation, from mode of communication to another mode of communication. So the use of language in what situation you are using the language, we are saying that it is called the language function. Next is your discourse. What is discourse? Discourse refers to how members of a subject area speak and write about their content area. It contains several elements such as structure and organization, manner of speaking, complexibility, intelligibility, and audience. Discourse can be understood as a process of communication. It is communication, but it is a specific style of communication which is mostly used in the world of academics. So discourse means using a particular type of communication in a particular type of situation. Next is motivating learners to think critically and analyzing information. In order to foster critical thinking skills in the students, teachers must create an environment that encourages curiosity, questions assumptions, and promotes the use of evidence to support arguments. This explores strategies for developing these skills and how teachers can guide students through the analysis of complex information. The role of a teacher in facilitating synthesis of information. How many of you have listened the Bloom's taxonomy? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know what is the Bloom's
Yes, ma'am.
taxonomy?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the Bloom's taxonomy, or what are the stages are there in the Bloom's taxonomy?
Ma'am, basically it consists of three stages, cognitive, affective, and psychomotor skills.
Yes, yes.
And each skill there are various kinds of
Domain.
steps.
It is not page. It is domain. Okay.
Sorry. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Okay. In cognitive domain, it is further divided into some steps.
Six steps, ma'am. Six, ma'am.
Okay.
Six
Can you
domain,
say
ma'am.
that? Yes.
Yes, ma'am. One is knowledge, understanding, apply, then analysis, synthesis, and create.
Evaluation.
Evaluation and create.
No. Create is the revised Bloom's taxonomy.
Yes, ma'am.
If you will say the Bloom's taxonomy, that is there is no creation, that is evaluation. And if we will talk about the revised Bloom's taxonomy, then the higher order skill, the topmost skill is creation. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So the role of a teacher in facilitating synthesis of information. The teacher must create a situation. Synthesis means what? Analyzing means breaking the part of a whole. And synthesis means taking these parts to create a whole. Okay?
Yes,
analysis means breaking whole into parts, and synthesis means taking these parts, creating a whole. Okay? So we must have apply the skill of synthesis, or we must have develop the skill of synthesis among the learners. That is, it's possible through collaboration, through note taking, through games and puzzles and brainstorming. The importance of language proficiency for teachers and students. For teachers, improved language proficiency can help teachers to communicate more clearly and effectively with their students, promote deeper understanding of subject matter, and foster more engaging classroom discussions. And for students, improving language proficiency means more effective communication, deeper understanding of subject matter, and greater success in academic and professional setting. The collaboration is increased language proficiency can also promote collaboration and understanding between students from different cultural and linguistic backgrounds. So the teacher must create collaboration among the learners. The need for teachers to acquire knowledge to teach content areas. So to teach effectively, teacher must have a deep understanding of the subject matter they are presenting. Next is teachers must have the knowledge of technology. Teachers must understand how to use technology or how to apply technology effectively and efficiently to organize the subject matter and present it in a better way. Understanding of different learning styles. The teacher must be able to present information in a variety of ways to accommodate different learning styles. There are different learners in our classroom. Some are visual learners, some are auditory learners. So the teacher must prepare himself or herself according to the learning style of the learner. Next, the teacher must develop strong communication skill. Effective communication is essential to ensuring that students understand and retain the content being presented. Strategies for fostering critical thinking skill. Ask open-ended questions. Open-ended questions encourage students to think creatively and outside the box, as there is no clear-cut answer. So the student this will allow the students to think creatively, and the students will come out with a better solution. Next is encourage debate and discussion. Debate and discussion allow students to explore ideas from multiple perspectives. Here we can say that the thinking process will be dynamic, promoting critical thinking, or we can say that divergent thinking and an ability to see a situation from different angles or multiple angles. Promote self-reflection, encourage students to examine and reflect on their own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. Self-reflection leads to better language accumulation or better productivity. Engage in problem-solving activity. Problem-based activities create opportunities for students to practice critical thinking by addressing real-world problems and scenarios. So these are all the critical thinking skill or creativity, problem-solving skill. These are all the 21st century skill that all learners must acquire. So critical thinking skill is also divided into 6 parts according to Bloom's taxonomy. Under the knowledge domain, we can use the terminology define, label, locate, memorize, name, recall, spell. These are the action verbs we can use under the knowledge aspect or knowledge domain. Next is your comprehension. In comprehension, organization and selection of facts and ideas. Comprehension रे हमर कोन आसुची comfort, describe, explain, relate, rewrite, etc. Next is your application. Application रे हमर apply, compute, conclude, construct, demonstrate, determine, use of facts, rules, and principles. Analysis. Separation a whole into component parts. That is analysis. Analyze, categorize, classify, compare. Next is your synthesis. Combining ideas or combining parts to form a whole. Change, combine, compose, construct, create, design. Next is your evaluation, developing opinions, judgments, or decisions. Appraise, choose, compare, conclude, decide, defend, evaluate, judge, justify. These are all the action verbs used for evaluation purpose. So next is your unlocking literacy from basic to disciplinary. Basic literacy, under basic literacy, there is phonemic awareness, learn to identify and manipulate the sounds of language through fun activities and games. Decoding and sight words, become a fluent reader by mastering letter sound, corresponds and high frequency words. Reading comprehension, understand and retain information from text through close reading, summarizing and predicting. Writing skill, develop effective writing techniques and conventions to communicate your ideas with clarity and precision. Next is your intermediate literacy. Under intermediate literacy, there is strategic reading. Improve comprehension by using active reading strategies like questioning, making connections, predicting, and summarizing. Under vocabulary expansion, learn to use context, clues, root words, prefixes, suffixes to decipher word meanings and build your vocabulary. Fluency development, practice reading with accuracy, expression, and appropriate pacing to increase reading speed and comprehension. Next is your disciplinary literacy, which is divided into different subjects. In science, use scientific process to design and conduct experiments, synthesize and analyze data, and communicate findings through scientific writing. In history, develop critical thinking skills by analyzing primary and secondary sources, interpreting events and perspectives, and writing historical narratives. In literature, analyze literacy elements, genres, and themes, and write literary analysis to communicate your understanding of complex work. In mathematics, master mathematical concepts and mathematical practices by solving problems, justifying solution, and using mathematical language accuracy. Next is your teaching with technology. We can use e-books and audiobooks, interactive learning games, smart boards, and multimedia. We can use all these materials while teaching, or we can embed teaching with technology. Next is your language is also fosters collaboration, self-reflection, and continual learning. And these all these things leads to professional development of the teacher. Next is your Unit 4, classroom as a space for discourse. What are the objectives? Enhance communication skills, promote critical thinking, foster collaborative learning. Van Lier identifies 4 types of second language classroom interaction. Type 1, the first, which he calls less topic orientation, less activity orientation, is a typical of everyday conversation. Thus, it is the least structured, allowing most freedom for self-expression. So this type of class interaction where there is less activity and less topic orientation. Here the child is given utmost freedom to self-express himself or herself. Number 2 type of class of interaction, that is more topic orientation and less activity orientation, which is typical of the type of interaction that occurs when information is provided in instruction or a lecture. The interaction is one way and involves little space for exchange of ideas or opinions. That is more topic orientation, less activity orientation. Here the role of the teacher is how to finish the chapter. Number 3, the third category, more topic orientation and more activity orientation, occurs when information has to be exchanged following specific and predetermined lines as in an interview, joke or story. Number 4 or type 4, the final category, less topic orientation and more activity orientation is typified by substitution drills, pair work and activities that have very specific procedures. So this is more activity orientation. Suppose, for example, if you want to enhance the speaking ability of the primary level learner, then you can apply many activities like chain drill, substitution drill, alternative drill, etc., etc. Next is your classroom discourse. It has been established by experts in the area of classroom discourse that the teacher plays an important role in understanding, establishing, and maintaining patterns of communication that foster to the greatest extent both classroom learning and second language acquisition. Therefore, classroom discourse needs to be understood to promote learning in the classroom. Musumeki discussed 4 reasons for the dominance of IRF sequence in our classroom. What is IRF? I stands for teacher's initiation, R stands for student's response, and F stands for feedback. The most common and typical structure of a classroom situation is IRF situation. So what is that IRF situation? IRF situation, teachers and students' expectations consider question and answer routines, appropriate classroom behavior. This is how conversation in a classroom is characterized. Teachers feel the need to make learners feel good. The feedback is given by a teacher to a student is important and necessary. The system of power relation in most classes means that it is the teacher who has more of the floor owing to asymmetrical roles. Finally, the time constraints facing teachers make them believe that question and answer routines are the most effective means of advancing the classroom discourse. So that should not be the case. All the time the teacher must not take the initiative or teacher's initiation is not necessary, and this sequence should not be followed because it is more monotonous, and the teacher here, the role of the teacher is very important to give instruction and to continue the session. So what should be the feature of a classroom discourse? Elicitation
Excuse
technique.
me, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Ma'am, repeat the IRF again.
IRF. I stands for teacher's initiation.
Response feedback.
Yes. R stands for student's response and F stands for feedback. This is the
Okay,
sequence.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, madam.
Okay, okay. So what should be the features of a classroom discourse? Okay, last 10 minutes we will discuss whatever doubt you have, okay?
Okay, ma'am.
So features of a classroom discourse. Number 1 is elicitation techniques. The teacher must create atmosphere or create a situation where the students will come out with a conclusion. It is not the teacher who will provide the conclusion, who will provide the solution of a particular problem. Rather, it should be the case that the teacher will create a situation where the teacher can elicit response from the audience, or teacher can elicit response from the students. So elicitation technique, the teacher may employ, the teacher may apply various techniques. Suppose the teacher will involve the students in pair work or group work,
Hello,
and
ma'am.
give test. Yes,
Ma'am, what is the illustration?
yes,
What is the illustration?
yes.
Technique?
Elicitation techniques.
technique?
Elicitation is a technique in which a teacher elicit response from the students. Understand?
Madam, simple meaning illustration teacher.
Ma'am, the teacher
Simple
को
meaning
expect from the student.
अच्छा simple meaning रे जदि हमें कहिबा, yes, yes.
मैम एठी कोन स्टूडेंट टू रेस्पॉन्स आशा करिवे टीचर की?
Yes. ethi teacher is not the teacher is not the knowledge creator. Knowledge will created by the students themselves. So here the role of the teacher is only a facilitator who will create a situation, and who will give an input, and the output will be generated by the students themselves. It is not the teacher who will generate the output. The teacher will only provide the input or instruction to the child. Is it clear
Facilitator.
now? Teacher is only a facilitator. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Teacher is only a guide. Okay. The role of the teacher is only a facilitator or guide. Here the role of the teacher is not a knowledge constructor or knowledge creator. Okay. Construction of knowledge will be developed, or knowledge construction will be acquired by the child himself or herself. The child will correlate his previous knowledge into the new knowledge, and the knowledge construction of the child will be knowledge will be constructed in that way. Here the teacher is not the knowledge constructor of the child. Is it okay or not? Will you proceed? Will you proceed?
Yes,
Okay. So next is your display question. What is a display question? Display question is one to which a teacher already knows the answer. For example, when was Mahatma Gandhi born? Okay. It is visible? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
So the
Yes, ma'am.
answer is
Visible.
already known to the teacher, where the answer is already known to the instructor. That is display question. So here the role of the teacher is ask some question to the students, whose answer or the answer is already known to the teacher, and the teacher wants to elicit response or answer from the students. Next is your referential question. What is referential question? Yes? Anybody who want to answer?
Referential question means student तांको माने आइडिया रु कौन सेटा देबाकू चाहबे रेस्पॉन्स था
Yes.
स्टूडेंट करो थिंकिंग प्रोसीजर ऊपर आंसर टा डिपेंड करे दैट विल वेरी फ्रॉम स्टूडेंट टू स्टूडेंट
Yes. Anybody who want to answer?
Make that question from the reference book or the reference book.
Or the reference book.
माने तो टीचर गोटे क्वेश्चंस पचारिबे स्टूडेंट तांकर ओन एक्सपीरियंस रो तांकर आंसर को से माने माने दबाकू ट्राई करिवे व्हाट इज देयर थिंकिंग
Yes. The teacher will provide a clue.
The teacher wants the real answer from the students.
For example,
मैडम जो क्वेश्चन पचारे कि गोटे पचारे महात्मा गांधी केबे जन्मग्रहण करथिले आपण जोटा कहिले
yes.
तो से कहिबे कि माने हमर क्लू देबे जोटा कि हमर गांधी जयंती पालन करा जाए केबे पालन करा जाए सेटा जोरा सेटा रियल आंसर सेटा से जानि परिबे
गांधी जयंती पालन करिवार यथार्थता कोन
मैम एटा केमती हबो एटा तो ऑलरेडी आंसर ता जणा अछि ना तो रेफरेंशियल क्वेश्चन केमिति हबो
No,
माने
no, no.
रेफरेंशियल क्वेश्चन
गांधी जयंती पालन करिवार यथार्थता कोन?
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ओके
It requires thought and effort. It is not a close-ended question. Okay, it is an open-ended question. So here referential question means it requires or it may ask the student to infer a meaning or to evaluate a statement. That means student a situation is created in which the student have to judge. A student has to analyze whether it is done, whether this should be done or this should not be done. That is your referential question. So it seeks a real answer from the learners and it demands explanation, thinking ability, and it also it also creates a situation where the students give the response or the teacher elicit response from the students. Next is your closed question. Closed question, all of you know that it has one answer and it is more objective type question, closed question. Next is your open-ended question. Open-ended question is more likely to be subjective and the learner have the scope to analyze or think from different angle and the learner is able to give different response from for a particular problem. It is open-ended question. It is subjective and it has it allows the student for divergent thinking, or we can say that it enhances the creativity and critical thinking ability of the learner. Next is your factual question. What is factual question? Yes, this question help determine if students know some required facts or information or not. So this is particularly the knowledge based question or recall based question, factual question.
मैम फैक्चुअल क्वेश्चन जो है डिस्प्ले क्वेश्चन सेम होबो
Yes.
फैक्चुअल क्वेश्चन और डिस्प्ले क्वेश्चन बोथ
No, display question may not be factual. Okay, but factual question must have to be display question. You understood or not?
हाँ मैम
आमे जो डिस्प्ले क्वेश्चन करूचे सेटा फैक्चुअल हेई पारे न हेई भी पारे.
मैम जेमते हम
But the
कहले
factual
वेयर
question
वाज
must have to be display. Yes.
तर डिफरेंस मैम कोन हम जेमते कहले व्हेन वाज गांधी बोर्न तो एटा तो डिस्प्ले क्वेश्चन सेम ता फैक्चुअल हेई परिबो कि नाही गोटे स्टूडेंट का पर्टिकुलर फैक्ट जानि जे गांधी एतिक डेट रे बोर्न करथिले
Huh. But factual question is limited to certain facts. It is limited to certain facts. And it is scientifically proven. It is scientifically proven that is factual.
vary karibo मैम
Yes, from situation it will vary. Factual question is based on facts.
Right, just one example, madam. Display and factual difference.
Ma'am, display means always fixed, but factual means may be vary.
No, factual is fixed. Display may vary.
Display.
Please,
ma'am, give me an example.
Ma'am, ଯେମିତି question କହିଛି who is the president of United States? ଯେମିତି ଏଇଟା ଆମର mainly
Suppose
vary କରିପାରେ ନା?
Earth moves around the sun. Okay, Earth moves around the sun. It is factual. It is a fact. It is fact, and it is already proven. And it is already proven. But display question may not be proven. It may be constructed according to the knowledge domain. From the remembering aspect or memorizing aspect, we can ask the display question. But factual question is the truth. It is always true. That is the fact. It cannot be changed. It is proven, already proven. and it is tested.
Ma'am, both of the answer to the example that the factual question related who is the president of USA. So how could this be a factual question?
Who is the president of USA? I am
This
not
is
clear
display question.
actually. This is, I think this is the display question. It may not be the
Display.
factual question, I think. I'm a little bit
This
confused. I
example,
don't think it is a factual question.
ma'am,
I
it is
think
given
factual
under
question
the
is more
example.
concerned to the scientific experiments and explanations. I
Eternal
think
truth.
factual
This
questions
is factual
are those
question.
questions. Yes?
The factual
Yes?
question is the eternal truth, right?
Yes, eternal
And
truth. I think that is the factual question.
Oh, yes.
And it is already
Yes, ma'am.
experimented or proven. And it is already
Ma'am, ଏଠି
experimented,
ଲେଖା ହେଇଛି
tested, and it is proven.
ମ୍ୟାମ୍ ଏଠି ଲେଖା ହେଇଛି display
So I
question
think,
do not
yes, display question.
display question do not normally generate new information. That means factual question is permanent.
You
କିନ୍ତୁ
no, ma'am,
display
ଯଦି
question
display question ଟା ମ୍ୟାମ୍ ଯଦି greater new inference ଆମର create ନ କରୁଛି ତ ମେ ବି ସେଟା constant but ତାହେଲେ definitely factual ଟା ଆମର କରୁଥିବ.
So now, no, kehi ete constant nuhanti. I think display question is particularly concerned with the knowledge aspect. Who, when, what. Okay, this is your display question, particularly concerned with the remembering aspect of the child. But factual question maybe how and why type question we can ask in factual question. Why this is happening and why these things are happening, how this is happening, it may be asked in factual questions, but it would not be asked in this display question. So a display question may be a factual question, but a factual question may not be a display question. Okay, is it okay or not?
ମ୍ୟାମ୍ ସେ ଯୋଉ question ଟା ଦେଇଥିଲା ତ ମ୍ୟାମ୍ ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ ଜାଣି ହେଲାନି କି factual question under the who is the president of USA. ତ ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ
No,
ସେଟା
I don't
confusion.
think that it is the right question. I don't think that it is the right question. In the next class, we will clarify it. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I will discuss with some of my colleagues or some other persons, and I will come out in the next class. Okay, with answer, proper answer. I also have a confusion, but I think from my point of view, factual questions are those questions which is based on the truth and which is already proven. That type of question is factual questions. Where display question is particularly concerned with the from the sake of answer information. Informative type questions are display questions, and factual questions are particularly related to the facts. Okay.
that means ma'am universal truth ଯେମିତି question ଟି
Universal truth, which are universally truth. Yes, that is factual, I think, from my point of view, but I am not sure. Okay. Next is your why questions. Why question is a must. If we are not asking the students why and how of a thing, why these things are happening and how this is happening, then we are not allowing the student to think. Yes or no? जदि आम पिला how and why type question पचारूने कहीं होची if the incident is why this incident is happening and how this is happening, then we are not able to give opportunity or scope to the child to brainstorm. Yes or no? So why type questions should be there in order to develop the creativity, problem solving, and critical thinking ability of the child. Why questions should be there. Next is your wait time. The teacher must wait for the response of the learner. It is not that teacher will ask the question and teacher will also give the response. So the teacher must wait for the response of the child. There should be a wait time. बेले बेले देखा जाए टीचर क्वेश्चन पचारती आंसर पाई वेट करती एमती भी हुए जे फास्ट पिलाटी जदि आंसर दे दउची देन टीचर इज नॉट कंसर्न फॉर द रेस्ट ऑफ द स्टूडेंट्स. So that should not be the case. The teacher must divide the class into separate groups or create groups. The teacher must give wait time so that the child will come out with a better conclusion or output. Next is your teacher echo. What is teacher echo? Yes?
Question repeat करें.
Yes,
Repetition.
teacher echo. Teacher echo.
Repetition, ma'am. Repetition of picture, any kind of concept.
Repetition or acknowledging. Okay. Repetition or acknowledging. Acknowledging the student's response. And giving him reinforcement. Giving him feedback. Okay. That is teacher echo. It must be there in the classroom teaching learning process in order to encourage the student to give response. Sometimes it happens the case that if a child does not know the answer and gives a wrong answer, then the teacher starts scolding him. That should not be the case. The teacher must think from the perspective of the child. The teacher must give appropriate reinforcement and feedback to the child. That is the teacher echo. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Next is your repair. What is repair? Repair means correcting the child's error. That is repairment. Correcting the people's error or learner's error. Repair is also called the error correction. So the whenever the child is coming out with a response, it may or may not be true, or it may or may not be correct. Here the role of the teacher is to repair the mistake of the child and give him some constructive feedback. The feedback should be constructive. It should not be destructive. So the feedback should be constructive and the teacher must apply some interventions. It is not the case that the teacher will only correct the mistake in the classroom or at that particular time. No, the teacher will take some time. The teacher will apply some interventions. After that, the teacher will re-monitor the child, whether the mistake of the child is corrected or not, whether he is going on the right path or not. So it is a cyclical process. The teacher will first give some instruction. The teacher will provide some interventions. After that, the teacher will identify or the teacher will inquire whether the intervention is applicable for the child or not, whether the mistake of the child is corrected or not. That is the repairment. Next is your modifying speech to learners. This is also another technique a teacher employs in a classroom discourse. That means modifying the vocabulary, the speaking ability of the learner, where he have to pause, where he have to apply intonation, in which pace he have to or he or she have to read the particular text or write a particular sentence. That is the modifying speech to learners. Is it clear? Next is another important thing, that is scaffolding. Scaffolding is an interactional feature where in language is fed in by the teacher during an exchange to help learners express themselves more clearly. The term scaffolding describes the ways in which teachers provide learners with linguistic cues to help self-expression. Scaffolding provides learners with cognitive support through dialogue as they engage in tasks that may lie outside their capabilities. So particularly the role of scaffolding is to provide cognitive support to the learner through dialogue. Next is breaking down the IRF sequence. I have already discussed it. Next is your another important thing